The Hoover handheld 18-volt vacuum cleaner. Beautiful, powerful, sleek. There's only one problem. It doesn't work. On October 2nd, I went to Home Depot and purchased the vacuum cleaner at an open box sale for $10. What you are about to see is the repair that follows. So the first thing I notice is the motor does actually turn when you hit the switch. It just doesn't go at maybe 1 revolution. So it's time to take this thing apart. There are 5 screws that you can actually get to take this thing apart. They're all pretty much the same size, except the one that goes in the handle. The most difficult part working on this vacuum cleaner was actually getting these trim pieces off. It was a pain to try to get them off without breaking them. The top one's not too bad, but the ones on the side are terrible. The left side you can actually leave on, which I didn't know at the time. There are no screws underneath there. But on the right side, there are 2 screws, one at the bottom corner and the other at the top corner. And after those are out, you can actually get this thing separated. The only thing holding this up here is that yellow wire. That yellow wire actually prevents the vacuum cleaner from operating if you don't have the filter and the filter housing on. So we're just going to take that off, and I'm going to go ahead and put that screw back in the hole. It's the tiniest screw on this thing, and if I don't put it back in, I'm for certain I'll lose it. And there it is. There's the vacuum cleaner taken apart. So now it's time to do a little bit of basic troubleshooting. The first thing I notice is on the bottom side of that circuit board by the switch, there actually is a fuse. And it is intact, so I know that fuse is good. That's not my issue. And I'm going to look for a few loose connections, and can't find anything there. Then I'm just going to see if I can turn that motor with my screwdriver, if I can feel any stoppages, anything holding it up, and I cannot. And then I'm just going to do the same test I did before. And you can see that motor turning when you hit the switch. It's just maybe 1 revolution. So I was pretty certain it was the battery. I went ahead and took it out and tried to read voltage. After it charged all night, I'm getting no voltage at all. So I'm pretty certain it's the battery, but I want to be absolutely sure before I start replacing things. So I'm just going to individually test the motor. If you just take a 9-volt battery and put it up to the motor, it should spin. Doesn't really matter, positive or negative, the motor will spin either way. I just want to make sure that it spins, and it does. So I am now for certain that the motor is good, and it is the battery that needs to be replaced. Luckily for me, Montgomery has an awesome battery shop. I went into Simmons Battery, showed them what I had, and they just made me a new battery while I waited. The good news, the stock battery is 1500 milliamps, but they actually made me a battery that was 2100 milliamps. So this was pretty cool. This took about 10 minutes in and out. New battery, and a little bit longer runtime with that 2100 milliamps, so I was excited. I'm fixing to start splicing the wires together, so I'm going to cut up some heat shrink. You want to put the heat shrink on the wires before you splice them together, otherwise you're not going to be able to use heat shrink. The battery was just a tiny bit bigger than the one that came with it, but I was able to wedge it in there, and now I'm going to splice the battery in. What I'm actually trying to do is the Western Union lineman splice. I know it's mainly used on solid wire and not stranded wire, but I feel it gives a pretty good connection. I just found out about it the other day, and I just wanted to try it out. Also, my soldering skills aren't the greatest, but between the Western Union splice and then the solder and then the heat shrink, I am very confident I will not have to open this back up for a loose connection. All I've got to do now is take the heat gun and shrink up that heat shrink tubing. And then one more quick test. And now I'm ready to bolt this thing back together. A quick tip. Go ahead and take a zip tie and just tie it around that handle to keep the switch from falling out while you try to get the bulk of the vacuum cleaner snapped back together. I kept finding that when I started to work the bottom, the handle part would come off and then the switch would come out. So after that, you can push it as hard as you want and it's going to stay put until you can get some screws in there and definitely make sure it's snug. And as usual, I'm just doing German torque on this, which is good and tight. You don't want to go crazy because you don't want to strip out the holes. And then here we go, putting these stupid plastic covers back on, which my wife said I had to put back on. I just wanted to leave them off. They're just as hard to get on as they are to get off. It probably was the most difficult part of this project, is putting these stupid trim pieces back on. But they do look cool. It does look better with them on. So I said yes ma'am, and I put them on. And then that's the last screw that goes in. It actually connects to that trim piece, so it's got to go in after the trim piece is put on. And you have a working vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh God. No, I didn't want to look. I didn't want to look. Oh, I know it. Bubba. Are you supposed to be on the couch? Is this where you go?